Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we are continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew today. We're in Matthew chapter 28. It's Sunday morning. Jesus is going to rise. He has risen from the dead. We're going to read verses 1 through 10. Now, late on the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the grave. And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord had descended from heaven and come and rolled away, the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his garment was white as snow. And the guards shook for fear at him and became like dead men. And the angel answered and said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you're looking for Jesus who has been crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come, see the place where he was lying, and go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead. And behold, he is going before you into Galilee, and you will see him. Behold, I have told you." And they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to report it to the disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and greeted them, and they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. And Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid, and go take word to my brethren to leave for Galilee, and there they shall see me." Okay, it's not clear whether the angel landing caused the earthquake, or whether the earthquake preceded the angel. The angel came and rolled the stone away, but that happened, and the soldiers were there to see it and were paralyzed with fear at it and were like dead men. And the angel is sitting there on the stone. And the angel looks the way angels look. Angels are not women with long flowing blonde locks and large wingspans. The Bible never, ever shows an angel in that way. All the angels that we know about in Scripture, and only two are named, Michael and Gabriel. All the angels that we know from Scripture are male. They are he's. He did this and he did that. They are male. And when we have them described, they're described in this way. I mean, just with a brightness that is brighter than anything humanly possible. And that's the way they are described throughout Scripture, and that's the way this angel is described here. And he says to the women, he's not here. He's raised from the dead, just like he said. Everyone in Matthew's gospel keeps referring back to what Jesus had said. It all happened exactly the way Jesus said it was going to happen. And he says, "Go tell the apostles. Go tell them the disciples, that he is risen from the dead, and he's going before you into Galilee, and you will see him. I have told you." And so all the gospel writers agree that the first persons to see the empty tomb are the women disciples. That the first persons to be given the task of sharing the message that he is risen are the women disciples. And that the first persons to see the risen Lord are the women disciples, particularly Mary Magdalene. And we have that wonderful moment in John's Gospel where Mary Magdalene thinks that Jesus, that someone's carried his body away, and she has a meeting with Jesus, but she doesn't realize it's Jesus until he says her name. In Aramaic, it's right there in the text, Mariam. Jesus says her name, and she recognizes his voice. And but all the gospel writers describe this in differing detail. But the women who go to embalm him that morning are the first to see the empty tomb, the first to be given the gospel message, the first to see the risen Lord. And they go away with fear and joy. It's just such a telling phrase, isn't it? Equal parts fear and joy, overjoyed that he was risen. But they were exposed to an angel. They saw the empty tomb. equal parts fear and joy. And the fear is there too. Mark's gospel especially mentions that they went away in fear. And then they have this meeting with Jesus. Jesus has a bodily form. It is not a bodily form that is bound by the three dimensions of human existence, which we know from the other gospels. But it is a bodily form so that they can cling to him. And of course, we know about Mary Magdalene and her private meeting with Jesus, and he tells her, don't cling to me. I haven't ascended to my Father yet. And that's an interesting phrase too. What is he communicating there? But that's in John's gospel. But he doesn't let these two, Mary and the other Mary, cling to him. And he says, go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee. He's going to meet them. He has a very specific appointment that he wants them to make in Galilee. Now, Jesus is going to see them multiple places, and he's going to see a lot of different people during the weeks before his ascension, which Paul details in a passage that was written earlier than this, in 1 Corinthians 15. Paul also tells us that he appeared to James, his own brother. And so when Jesus says, tell my disciples, and then tell my brethren, maybe he's saying my brothers, my actual brothers, you know. I don't know. Or maybe he means everything, all of the above. But we do know from 1 Corinthians 15 that he did appear. But Matthew is concerned with this meeting in Galilee that takes place right before he ascends into heaven. We know about multiple meetings in Galilee, the breakfast on the beach that we're told about in John's Gospel. We know that on the day he was raised from the dead, he appears to the men of Emmaus. We know that he meets in Jerusalem in the upper room with the disciples. But John is concerned with this particular meeting in Galilee in which they're going to receive the Great Commission. We'll talk about that more next time, or in the next two sessions. We're going to pick up with verse 11 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.